Howdy, folks. Welcome to the podcast Iron. My name is Laura Mullen Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. I am delighted to introduce Danny Rohr as today's guest. Danny is an active artist and sculptor, as well as being the co-owner of Black Dog Metal Arts LLC with his wife, Jam Rohr. Danny, I can't thank you enough for this great conversation about art, iron, and life. Your energy and enthusiasm for spreading knowledge about iron casting as an artistic format through the work that Black Dog Metal Arts does is admirable and very much needed in this world. I am so grateful to count you and Jam as some of my ride or die gang in our generation of casting artists, because I know that when shit hits the fan, you'll both be right by my side to face whatever it is head on. The podcast Iron Show is sponsored in part by supporters on Patreon who are helping me afford the online hosting of these audio files. So a great thanks to all of you folks over there on Patreon. I really hope you've enjoyed the after shows as much as I have. Now, for all of you listening or watching, thanks so much for tuning in, and please enjoy. Do you have any questions for me before we start? I should have asked you that before.
Do you have a favorite day of the week?
Oh, it might be Saturday.
It's a good one. It's a good choice.
I think it's an obvious choice. Obvious choice. I wasn't expecting that.
Keeping you on your toes, man.
I know, I might have to start off with that just because.
Do it.
I might. Watch me. Oh my goodness. Well, Danny Rohr, thank you so much for being our guest today on the podcast Iron. And the first thing I want to know is, well, who the hell are you anyways?
Yeah. Hey, to you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking at the list of people that you have interviewed and are going to. I'm like, why is she talking to me? This is crazy. No, I'm super honored to be here. But yeah, who am I? So my name is Danny Rohr. I currently live in Peoria, Illinois, and my wife and I both own Black Dog Metal Arts. It is it's a metal sculpture foundry. We do fabrication. We like to focus on iron, but we also, have bronze and aluminum capabilities. But we also do some woodworking out of there, and we teach classes as well. My wife also owns Radish Kitchen. It's this vegan cafe that she opened up a few months ago here in Peoria. So that's the other thing that I do as well. I kind of just do whatever she needs over there.
Yeah. Congratulations on that opening up too. I mean, I remember, because Jam and I we talk a lot every so often. And so for everybody listening, I'm going to be having Danny's wife, Jam Rohr, on the podcast in a couple of months. So they're both big players in the iron casting community, but we're going to separate them a little bit so that you don't have too much overlap. We'll, kind of draw it out.
And she's the brains of the operation too. Make no mistake.
Okay. So let that be on record. But I remember during the pandemic, she started doing the meal service for people that could get vegan meals for the week. And so then I haven't talked to her since the storefront opened.
Yeah. She started a meal prep service, and people, just for her friends. And then she saw that people would possibly buy it if she opened it up to the public. So she did. And her 5-year plan was to have her own storefront eventually, where she can, make it more accessible to the public. And it happened in a year. Yeah. So things just very quickly snowballed for her. And if you would have told me 3 years ago that we'd be running a cafe, I'd be like, wait, no, I wouldn't, absolutely not. I'm pouring iron. Yeah. It's just one thing leads to another. And here we are running 2 businesses and trying to sleep. So yeah.
Fitting it in,
dude. Yeah.
So that's all who the hell you are? That's everything.
There's 34 years of who I am. That's kind of the two hats that I'm wearing right now. But as far as, I mean, I can go in depth as to, how I got to be where I am now.
Well, let's just talk about, like what kind of an artist? Just a little teaser at the beginning. Like, what is your art?
Yeah. What is that? So I'm always kind of drawn to darker things, kind of the macabre. So my art, I like to research ancient devices of torture and execution and figure out how they are made and for what reason, and then remake them in a modern context, but for a positive reason rather than the negative reasons of torture and execution. Obviously, I have a love for, engineering, how things are made and who made them. And I kind of couple that with my fascination with darker sides of history, and and I put that into a modern context for whatever reason I see fit.
Perfect little elevator. It's like giving your elevator spiel, but for people that are listening, they'll understand. It's not like for Uncle Ted who didn't really understand.
Yeah, instructors in grad school kind of they drove the elevator speech into our head every semester.
I mean, it's a good thing to have every once in a while when you're on a podcast. You just whip it out and
totally
brush it off.
Yeah.
So but let's start at the beginning. Formidable years. Any artistic endeavors, any natural tendencies towards anything like that?
So not really. It took me a while to even think about art. I grew up in a small Midwestern town, Mascoutah, Illinois, and it was a farm town. The word art wasn't really a thing of magnitude at all where I grew up. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just the people the people around me didn't really see it as something that mattered or like something that was feasible to do with one's time. So I didn't even consider art all throughout school, high school. I took one photography class in high school and just for fun. And then I went to community college, Southwest Illinois College, SWIC, and I took an art class just on a whim. It was just a basic design class. And it was the first time, it was a 3-hour class twice a week. And it was the first time in an educational setting that I could sit down for 3 hours, focus on something and be good at it. And I never experienced it. I wasn't like a bad student in high school, but I didn't excel either. And the only thing I was good at in high school was shop class, wood shop class. So I kind of was like, all right, this art thing is kind of cool. Maybe I'll stick with it for a while. And I took a few more classes, and eventually I decided to transfer to a 4-year state university, Southeast Missouri State University in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. To get a graphic design degree, because that's where the jobs are, right?
That's and where the money is.
It sounds less scary to your parents.
Yes.
But when I was there, I took an entry level. It was a 3D design class, 3D foundations, and the professor. I had to write a paper about an artist, and I wrote a paper about Chris Burden, the sculptor, and I'm not a bad writer. So the sculpture professor noticed it and sat me down in his office and was like, "Who are you? What is this? What are you doing here?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I went to college." And so he asked what I like to do. And I was like, "I like woodworking." And he's like, "Sculpture is so much woodworking and metalworking."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, I'll try this sculpture thing." And I fell in love with it. It just kind of made sense to me. I came from my dad and my grandpa were both sheet metal workers. So and they taught me a little bit about metalworking growing up, but they didn't want to force it on me. They just wanted me to know how it works. And so I found myself in a metal shop and a wood shop, and I was using the same materials that my father and grandfather used, but for different reasons. And I was running into the same issues they were running into as far as fabrication goes. but again, for rather than, industrial purposes, for
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of expression. So it was this connection to my lineage that I found amazing. It was challenging. It was physical. It was dirty, and it was different than any classroom setting I'd been in. So I stayed with that, and then I went to a grad school. I went to Eastern Illinois University, where I got a master's in studio art and continued with sculpture. And that's where I first learned to cast. And then I went to another grad school after that, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, where I got my Master of Fine Arts with an emphasis in sculpture. 3 years there, graduated, moved back to Peoria, and Jam and I were applying for teaching jobs everywhere. And,
Yeah.
which is whatever most people who graduate do. And it's very
A lot of us do that. Yeah.
Totally. The adjunct hustle is hard to get into and hard to stick with once you're in there.
Yeah.
Eventually, we just kind of got sick of asking permission to have a job. So we said, screw it, we'll make our own job. And we started Black Dog Metal Arts and started doing our own thing and working for ourselves. But I mean, not till we had our like full-time jobs.
Yes.
Of course,
Yeah.
while we were doing this. We've gotten to a point where we have been able to leave our full-time jobs and to do these passions separately. So that's where it came from. Yeah, I didn't find art until I was like 18 or 19. I'm not one of those people. It's like from, the second I could open my eyes, I knew I was an artist. I didn't know that. I didn't think about art at all until I took a chance and found it.
That's awesome. And it's kind of really interesting because both paths, either through childhood or later in life, be kind of stumbling upon it or being brought to it.
Mm-hmm.
They're all valid because we all ended up in the same kind of field and for the same love of visual expression or whatever type of expression that we each choose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it doesn't matter the reason or the time that we get into this cast iron art world.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if your first iron pours when you're 10 or if you're 50. I think we can embrace everybody for whatever reason life brought them into this community that I've grown to love so much. Yeah.
So tell me about the casting that you did. So it was during your first master's degree, you did casting, but that was bronze and aluminum.
Yeah. There was no iron at Eastern Illinois University. My instructor was Matt Boonstra, and he just kind of told me, he's like, you need to learn casting. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know why, but okay. And then I cast some like aluminum light bulbs just because it was what I had. And once I saw how the process works and what I am now, the whole world of creation that opened up to me after doing that, I just fell in love with it and I never wanted to stop. It just took that first time of physically doing it, making the sculpture and then being by a crucible that's getting heated up and pouring it. And just not just that, but like that, I loved how long it takes to do it. It's not like I can just, snap my fingers and I have a wax model done. Like it's so labor intensive to do it correctly. And I like that. I like feeling like I earned what I made. You know what I mean?
I do.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting something a little quicker. That's totally cool.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with instant gratification. That's fine.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I like labor intensive things. I like something that I have to be meticulous about. And yeah, man, mold making is that for me.
For sure. So was it shell?
Yeah, I learned ceramic shell casting was the very first one that I learned. And then they didn't have sand capabilities at the time at EIU, but then when I went to SIU, they had both ceramic shell and sand. And I prefer sand now just because it's like making a puzzle. Like you have to figure out how you're gonna, make this mold, take it apart, pull your pattern out without screwing everything up and put it back. I love the just the nitty gritty engineering of that puzzle making process of sand mold making. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Me too. So you learned that at Carbondale, the sand mixing and what kind of this is like inside baseball, but what kind of chemistry did they use when you were there?
What kind of chemistry did they
Like for the
use?
sand mold, is it Linicure? Is it
Mhm.
Chemcast? What's the other sodium silicate? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't even know
So
if you remember. It's just something I like to.
so it was Linacure, was what we used,
Hmm.
and it was I think it was a three-part. You have
Okay.
your resin and then your binder and your catalyst.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, mix it all together. They had an awesome, big, powerful sand molar in there to mix it all up.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, it was great. And yeah, man, you just dump it. You get, I don't know, like 10 minutes until things
Hmm.
start setting up. So
Hmm.
it's like kind of a mad dash, but
Yeah.
after you've done it a few times, it's cool. After you've done it a few times and you're working with somebody else and you learn the dance, like
Yes.
you don't even have to talk. You just, everybody knows like what to do and when and what their job is. Just kind of like same as an iron pour. It's like you just
Yeah.
learn it over time. I love it. Uh, yeah, that. And then the ceramic shell, I don't really know a lot about the chemistry of that. We use silica sand and
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, fine and coarse silica sand and all that good stuff.
I
So yeah,
have
that
can confession on my part is like I've never made a shell mold.
girl, and you
Uh,
got this podcast? Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Plenty of people have.
no.
We don't do it now because it's hard. It's expensive, man.
Yeah.
And sand molding just lends itself to I think it's more forgiving as far as like the material finding materials. Like it's easy to find sand. You can find that anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the resin you can mix it up like really in a bucket.
In
You
a
don't,
bucket. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Or like
you,
a Harbor Freight sand mixer,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, totally.
And I do feel like you're right. It is more forgiving. Like if you know where it kind of gives and takes, you can, oh well, that, I didn't get the parting line exactly right, but I can fix that before I ran the second side. Like, yeah, there is a
Mhm.
little bit of like, yeah, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I don't know. I just like it. I like it's. I think, and it all depends on what it is that you're making. Some things you can't make is with a sand mold. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
like at our foundry right now, we are limited in a way as far as complexity of molds because we don't, we do not yet have ceramic shell
Yeah.
possibilities. But we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get
Yeah.
there one
And
day.
also I would say the Metal Museum in Memphis, they have a really good, like, um, simple setup, I feel like
Yeah,
that
yeah. Think, yeah.
I have to have James on so we can talk pick his brain about it at some point. But
Gotta have James on.
I know I
Oh,
have a
Vanderpool, yeah.
list. I have like a running list.
Is he like on your Mount Rushmore of uh iron people?
We should make a shirt that
For
has,
real, dude.
yeah, well,
James Vanderpool, Jerry Massey,
yup.
Noah Kirby, and you.
No, no,
That's
no,
the
no.
well,
Let's,
you are on my Mount Rushmore for sure because you were at my very first iron pour and it was at SIU and you were the person that came to jam. My wife's name is Jam, for anybody that doesn't know, JAM.
no, yeah,
Uh,
we should have cleared that up at the beginning. People are probably like, what? But yes,
yeah,
okay, good call.
but yeah, you were the first person to come to us and be like, hey, what questions do you have? What don't you know about what's going on? What can I help you with? And like you were the person that shepherded us into the iron world and made us feel welcome and comfortable. And so I forever will remember you as the person that like helped us find our love of
Really?
iron. Absolutely, 100%.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't know that
yeah, you
because
were.
you and Jam had like a calmness about the both of you that, and you had poured before. So,
Uh,
well, no,
my
you had poured molten metal before. And
Oh
so
yeah, 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 yeah,
there's
yeah.
a difference in attitude and comfort level from somebody who's never poured molten metal before and somebody who has. And so I just thought that you had, because also
Yeah.
you were graduate students at Southern Illinois University Carbondale, which has a extensive reputation for iron casting and still is has a program where there is iron pours. And
Mhm.
so I just thought that, I don't know, maybe you were like newer to it, but I didn't know that that was your first iron pour because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
handled the ladle really well and everything like that. And so that's so funny. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
that pour. I remember meeting you guys though. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. You were in the wax room doing something. I didn't know who you were. I thought maybe you're another student or something.
Yeah. I was probably signing
Um,
a waiver.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
totally. Yeah, yeah. The if you burn your hands off, don't sue us waiver.
yeah. Yeah. Which is
Yeah,
totally legitimate for
yeah,
visitor casters to have to sign for any place. So,
yeah. But still, it's like something that's instilled in us. That interaction we had with you, making us feel welcome and seen, is that's a big part of what we try to do for Black Dog Metal Arts, is bring it to people who have very little to no experience in iron casting and making them feel welcome and making them feel like they can absolutely be a part of this community. So yeah, I mean, what you gave to us is what we spread to others. So thank you, dude.
well, thank you. And thank you for keeping on doing that,
Yeah.
because that's how this community is going to grow. I had somebody mention to me like, well, eventually you're going to run out of it's somebody that's not in the community and it's a very, very good friend. So they're not in the community. So they just don't know. But the comment was like, well, eventually you're going to run out of people to interview. And I was like, no,
Bullshit. No, that there's
and also there's
it's
nothing wrong
ever
with
growing.
having multiple interviews with the same person, or we could talk about other stuff, not origin stories. So,
Totally,
um,
totally.
but you're bringing more people into the community that eventually I probably will interview
Yeah,
over
man.
time,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like we just had a pour with a high school.
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw that.
yeah, in Streeter, Illinois, and um, it was with like the high school's like metal shop students, and you're really not going to see an iron pour, especially for art purposes. I mean, unless you go searching for it in college or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did it with these high school students, and they loved it, and now they wouldn't have seen it elsewise, and now they're wanting to, like, they're asking us, where else can they do this, and we're giving them resource on like who you can talk to, and
Yeah.
when's the next time we can come out and pour with them again. So yeah, I think
How did that come about? Did the teacher contact y'all? And
yeah, so the first pour we had in Peoria, you were there for that pour too, actually.
it was like a film, was it like a photograph festival or something?
Yeah, it's an organization called Big Picture Peoria in
Yes.
Peoria, Illinois, and they kind of did, like, they do this big festival, and they asked us to pour iron there, and the pour did not go well, but that's okay. But
It's one of my most memorable pours.
yeah, and I'll come back to that in a second because I don't want to
Okay.
get
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
far off topic. But
Put a pin in that.
yeah, Dave is the instructor at Streeter High School, and he just got a hold of it. He saw that we were doing a pour and got a hold of us and asked if he can come, and we're like, yeah, of course, come on out.
I
Yeah,
remember him.
he was charging the furnace.
He was, yes. And he
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
powerhouse.
absolutely.
That's what you need on
Yeah.
a tower.
And he's just a ball of light. He's so kind. And so he contacted us a few months ago and said that he was thinking of, he wanted to know what was the option of us coming out and pouring with him. And I had just finished building a furnace that is made to be portable and set up by just like 3 people if
Nice.
you're low on a crew. So I was like, hell yeah, man, we just built this. I just finished this furnace. Let's bring it out and run it. See if I messed anything up. Run it for the first time. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
So, yeah,
did the students make molds? His high school students make molds?
so we wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Because they're high school students and they have a very busy schedule, and
For sure. Yeah.
if attention spans can only go so far, so they just made a bunch of scratch block molds.
Nice.
Yeah, they made like 150 of them or something. And
Oh, wow.
it was a really quick pour. We tapped and just poured into scratch block molds. That was it, just to show them the process. This is how it's done. So we didn't get to make any fancy molds or anything like that.
Mhm.
And but it was really cool because they broke all the iron, they had all the coke and weighed it out. Like
Hmm.
they did all they made the molds. We just had to bring our furnace and our equipment and set it up and have pour. So it's like these burly country kids, like
Yeah,
we were just like, hey, go lift this, go, set this up. And they were so like just stoked to be a part of it and learn what it is we're doing. That it was awesome. So yeah, he came to one of our pours. We became friends. He asked us to pour at his school, and that's how it happened.
perfect.
Yeah.
Is now a good time for me to ask you about that furnace? And like, what are the details? Like, what's the inner diameter? All that. I love it. Like, I
Yeah.
just,
Heck yeah. So it has a 10-inch bore.
uh-huh.
So it's not a huge furnace, but like I said, I wanted it. The first furnace we built was, you remember this thing. It was like both stacks were like 4 feet tall and there's like a 4-inch lining on it. So they were both like over 500 pounds. And you needed a hoist to set it up no matter what. So I built this furnace. I didn't have any round stock or any way to make like rounded metal like a slip roll or anything. So
Yeah.
I made a hexagonal furnace with a round inner bore. And the windpipe on it is, the wind belt is really cool. It's like not attached to it. I think it's a 4-inch inner diameter metal tube that runs around the outside. It's not connected to the furnace.
Okay.
Other than the chweers, all the chweers come down from the windpipe and connect to the furnace. So
Okay.
like I wanted it to be a cool looking furnace. Every windpipe that I've seen is connected to the furnace. So
Uh-huh.
I wanted a windpipe that is not connected to the furnace except for the chweers.
Which is like great because it doesn't need to be connected to the
No.
furnace. So
Yeah, it's cool looking. And because it's not connected to the furnace, now there's so many places to put straps on this thing if I need. There's so many grab points. It's so easy to get people to lift it up.
Danny and I have to come clear during the setting up of the furnace for the one of the iron pours, some straps got cut.
Yeah, yeah. I
It
think
was inevitable. So that's why he's bringing up this being able to put straps on it and lift it.
yeah,
and handholds
yeah.
because we were in a between, I think my father would say, between a rock and a hard place.
Rock and a hard place. Yeah, man. It's like every mistake that I made on the first furnace, now I know what to do differently on the second one.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I mentioned. I wanted to circle back to something.
Yeah.
That pour that we had, the first pour in Peoria that we did, and things went wrong.
Yeah.
That sucks. But every pour that I have done or been to when things go wrong are the pours that I learned the most. If a pour goes perfectly, Andrew Marsh kind of touched on this when you interviewed him about not being afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah.
When things go perfectly, I'm not learning what I need to do better next time. So every time something goes wrong in a pour, I know what I need to be thinking about next time. What do I need to improve on? And it's great. So yeah, that first pour we had that, we bridged the furnace and things didn't go well. That totally influenced the design for my second furnace, and the thing runs real good too.
That's great. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to run on the crew with it. I think we should at least say though, at that very first pour, we did get iron.
Yeah.
So we'll come clean and so we were tapping, and that's the thing too. I feel like we shouldn't be embarrassed. Like you, Jam, and like everybody that was there, we shouldn't be embarrassed, but it was like we figured out like the furnace was bridged. We had no lance. There was like no options. There was like a crowd of people around caution tape, and there were molds. Like we weren't selling scratch blocks at that pour, but there were molds that you and Black Dog Metal Arts people had paid to take workshops to make molds. And so, even though we were going to be having another iron pour like the next week or 2 weeks later or something, we wanted to pour them then. And so we ended up just tapping out of the slagger, which there's so many people listening right now that are probably like, yeah, I've tapped out of a slagger too. And so we just like bought it and like let it run up a certain amount. And then, just tapped the slagger and I feel like we may have eventually gotten it. I have the whole thing. I have footage of the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I've watched that footage, and you're so good at editing it to make it look like we didn't screw up.
I,
You
I
did so good.
I glossed over a lot of our hiccups, but I think I have them all. So eventually, like 10 years from now, we can put out like a 10-year anniversary, like of all of the once it's water under the bridge. Oh,
Totally.
geez.
Yeah. But
But
yeah,
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 I learned a
we're
lot from that. So that was like a thing that I have to say when I was in grad school, by the time I was there, my professor, Jim Bonacorsi, had everything dialed in. Like he was a veteran iron caster and he had his furnaces and he had everything kind of pretty much figured out, even to the timing, everything. And a lot of, I think, people in that generation do because they're so experienced. They know what they're going to put up with and they know how to handle everything. And so every single iron pour that, and this isn't even bragging, this is almost like a confession. Every single iron pour that we had at the University of Georgia while I was there for 3 years was like went perfectly. And
yeah,
so then when I left, I didn't have any troubleshooting skills or like any, I hadn't really been on another furnace besides the style that my professor, he has a line of furnaces that are different sizes of the same style. And that was a great experience because I learned how to be calm and I knew what to expect. Basically, I learned what I was looking for. And so if something sounds funny, I'll be like, I don't know, that sounds funny, but I don't know why. And so then
yeah,
post grad school, getting out, this has been like my era of learning, going around seeing variety and, seeing
yeah,
how people fix things. And
totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, like when people who have been doing this for a long time are setting up for an iron pour and there's people around that don't know what to do or what's going on or what to troubleshoot, it can be difficult to know what people don't know and to forget. And it's easy to forget that people don't know why you're setting the bed like this, or why you're clearing the tweers in this certain way. It's easy to get into the flow of things when you know what you're doing and you've been doing it for a long time
Yeah.
and not explain what is happening. Noah Kirby's really good about explaining what's happening to people standing around watching
Oh yeah.
an iron pour. Yeah. So yeah, it, once you're out of an educational environment like we were in,
Mm-hmm.
it is a big learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
Until you know what you're doing. But yeah, man, that's like anything though. You might,
Yeah. You got to
yeah,
earn it.
exactly. Yeah, man. You don't know what you're doing at first, and then you just keep screwing up until you learn how to not screw up.
Yeah.
That's how I learn things. Yeah. The next pour we had was the all female pour, which I think you came to.
I did. I
Um,
did.
yeah, we're really proud of that. So it was the first strictly female identified pour in Peoria's history. And it was great, man. That was the same furnace that we used previously, and you guys killed it, man.
It was so much fun
Mhm.
to be um there because a lot of people came into town for that. So there was also an exhibition, Women in Iron. And I feel like I remember now it seems like it was so long ago, but then it also seems because of the pandemic, it seems like it was just last year. But
Mhm.
it was because of um like women's month or something. Like it was an event that I feel like Jam applied to be a part of a like a
Mhm.
citywide initiative of women in arts.
That's
And
exactly what it was. Yeah.
uh-huh. And
Yeah.
then it was the exhibition of nationwide exhibition of women in art in iron, sorry. And then the iron pour was kind of the culmination of all of that. And the exhibition, so I
Yeah.
just as of listening to this recording, all of the listeners will have just listened to Kristen Tordella's interview because I just interviewed
Ooh,
her. I just
I
interviewed her
love her.
last night. So she was the co-juror of that exhibition
Yeah.
with Jam. So
Yeah.
that,
Jam and Kristen did a great job setting up. It was a big show too. There's a lot of work in it. And
yeah.
not only that, that was a wild weekend because Jam and I got married. The next day was the reception for that exhibition. And the day after that was the all-female pour.
Yes.
So it was just a whirlwind of insanity. But it was cool that the exhibition and the pour happened like right after we got married because all
Yeah.
these people people had an excuse to come into town
Yeah.
for the wedding and the pour and the exhibition. So it was really cool. Like people were able to come in for all those things. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that part of the like traveling to these kind of well, like family reunions is a part is
Yeah.
really important. This like well, I wouldn't say that that would be like a homage. I don't know how I want to say it. Like it's there's something about the sacrifice that one makes to do a drive or travel along. Like there was one person that even came all the way from Texas. You know, they were from Chicago, from
Pittsburgh too, I think.
Pittsburgh, from um Gabby was from Detroit.
We had work in the exhibition from New Zealand, I think was the furthest away.
Oh,
Kate Ratekin
wow.
sent something in.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was so cool to be the hub that got to bring people together in that way. It was great.
Because it's
Yeah.
like I mean there have been a couple of iron art exhibitions that I've how do I want to say it? Like I know that there's been a couple of iron art exhibitions throughout the years, but usually I feel like most of the time they're linked with a conference.
Hmm.
And so they are kind of like short, fleeting things like and it kind of is just for the conference almost. I mean, not always, and I know that like they've been organized by other people, but it's just like that I did feel really like it was special because it was
Yeah.
in a legitimate gallery
Hmm.
for a period of time, not just like, oh, you show up with your piece on Thursday for the conference and we install it and then it's down on Sunday. And it's
Yeah.
just like a flash.
Yeah.
What did they say? A flash in the pan or something. And
Totally.
so to actually be in an exhibition that wasn't just a conference exhibition was a really big honor for me, for my iron art to be in an iron art women exhibition.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. And it was, yeah. And for it being for female identified artists was like a huge, like, I don't know if honor is the right word, but I mean, I was honored to be a part of it because as a male identified person, it's cool. There's some people would ask me like, so when do men get to pour? And it's like every iron pour that ever happens ever, just not this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to let people be surrounded by like-minded individuals and that, guys were coming in from all over the nation too, to be allies and help like run water or, like
Yeah. Yeah.
help
Gabe
talk to the
Akagawa
crowd.
was there.
I think Kelly Ludeking came out for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was great, man. So it
and
was.
like Noah Kirby was there. Or
Mhm.
wait, yeah, he was there. And yeah, like just came to support
Yeah,
and that spoke volumes. And
yeah, absolutely. Support our Iron Sisters. Yeah. So yeah, that was. I'm really proud of that. That was a cool moment for us. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I was really happy to like I was really glad that you guys were close enough that I could go. To be
Mhm.
completely honest, because I feel like a lot of times I'm like, but you're just so far away. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
you guys pouring soon or pouring
Mhm.
more and I'll come up. But let's see.
Yeah.
So was that what you wanted to circle back to?
So yeah, I wanted to circle back to earlier that first pour in Peoria that we had did
Yeah.
not go well, and how important that is, and how beneficial that is to learn from our mistakes and to help influence our future furnace designs and the way we conduct the pour and just everything. Just the
Yeah.
mistakes we made were vital to our success.
Yeah. That's a
Put
great.
that on my tombstone.
I was going to say that would be a great t-shirt.
Yeah, man.
So then you immediately, like weeks later, poured again with the same furnace and it was screaming hot.
Yeah.
But then I
Yeah.
feel like I remember you built another furnace, not this little 10-inch that you're talking about now, but another one that you took to trails.
So I've taken both my furnaces to trails.
Uh-huh.
But these are the only two that I've built. Was
Okay.
that first big monstrosity, and this with help from others. I didn't build it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the second furnace I built is this hexagonal one that we've named Slayer Quimby, after Mayor Quimby on The Simpsons, because it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, we built Slayer Quimby, and took that to trails, July of last year, July, what year, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get to run it because too many things were happening.
Yeah.
But I was able to set it up and burn it in at least. It was cool seeing smoke come out of it for a little bit.
Yeah. And burning in is a very important part of having a successful, like a furnace that runs successfully.
Yeah. And doing it at sculpture trails is like, I love sculpture trails so much. It's so dear to my heart. I love Jerry Massey. I love Andrew Marsh. I love what they're doing out there with the interns and just being there
Yeah.
with no running water. It's like its own little planet out there.
Yeah.
It's great. Love it. And those trails interns are tough, man.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
They're out there for a whole month with no air conditioning, no running water, no nothing. And the artists are just
It's sleeping in tents.
dude, those guys talk about intense. Those guys are tough.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, I love it there. We're not able to go this year. I don't. Did it already happen this year?
It's coming up. It's coming up.
It's July. It's every July.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when this episode airs, it will be going on right when it's airing.
Dang, man, that's crazy. I should see if I can get out there for Fire at Night. So at the end, for anybody that doesn't know, the end of July they have Fire at Night, which is just a day of pouring iron, and when the sun goes down, they have a big iron pour. And Andrew Marsh usually hollows out a big log and dumps a bunch of iron in it and explodes. It explodes and scares everybody, and
for good reason. But
totally.
It is something to experience. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
And inspiring, and it makes me feel alive for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, what they have built out there is incredible. I absolutely love sculpture trails. So if you ever feel the need to donate to something, donate to trails. It's great.
Absolutely. So I guess so you're talking about trails, you're talking about all of these different castings. So are you, and this is kind of like a personal question, but like, are you making art now with iron in it? Or maybe you want to talk about how you were using iron when you were making your body of work in grad school?
Right now, between Black Dog Metal Art Commissions and Radish Kitchen, it's like I love what I'm doing, but the thing that sucks is I have like very little time for my own work between commissions and the store.
Yeah, which is totally that's why I asked it in such a kind of weird, cagey way, because I didn't want you to feel like, I think a lot of us who are active in the cast iron art world, but are also making a living, like the art making kind of is few and far between, but very rewarding when it does happen. So that's why I didn't want to like hold your feet to the fire. Like, what are you making now? But just what is, go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm working on, right now, I'm getting some wax patterns ready right now for iron specifically. I love life casting. For anybody that doesn't know, it's just when you take a mold of a part of the human body, and that's what you're gonna make out of metal. But I'm working on some things from live casting. I'm reading. I'm super into comic books right now. Like in the last like 4 or 5 months, I was just like, oh, I forgot about these things I loved when I was little. So I'm reading a lot of like horror based comics and looking at their imagery and thinking about like, how can I use this type of imagery in things that I'm making and things that I want to say. I'm inspired by a lot of work of Junji Ito. He's a Japanese manga artist that like is just kind of insane with the ideas that he comes up with and the forms that he comes up with. And
Sounds like a good person to be inspired by.
Junji Ito, yeah, he's wild. Just type his name into Google and hit images, and you'll be like, "Oh dang, what is this about?" So yeah, I'm kind of looking at like a lot of comic book imagery and figuring out how I can use it to influence what I'm making and what I'm saying. And you wanting to move forward with some live casting and stuff like that. So things are moving, but once you get out of school, it's just things are super expensive and things take a lot of other things take our time up. And it's just the reality. So yeah, I'm getting a few things ready for pours in the future. Yeah.
And I will say that personally, because so now I just recently got the sand mold capabilities in my garage, which was a huge.
I saw that. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Dude,
it seems
yeah.
like such a silly thing. Like my mom came to visit and see my house. Like Robin, my husband and I bought a house in 2020. And so my mom hadn't been out from Massachusetts to see the house. And so she comes all the way from Massachusetts, flies into Illinois to see the house. And I was like, and this is where I mix sand. And she was like,
cool.
Oh, that's nice, honey.
Awesome.
It's just so like, it's something I'm so proud of. And it's only relatable to our family, our iron family.
It's so esoteric. Like when we got our pallet jack, I was like,
yeah.
Oh my God, we have a pallet jack.
We've arrived.
Yeah. And everybody else is like, okay. But I'm like, you don't understand. I can move the heaviest things now.
Pallet jacks are expensive too.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Like all this stuff. And it's like the school just had it.
Yeah.
And it had been like kicking around since like they're like, yeah, that's from World War II. We got it at surplus. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like every time I see a pallet, I'm like, has anybody got the name on that pallet? What's up? I could use another pallet. Yeah, man.
Never have too many pallets.
Yeah, it's the goofiest stuff, but it all matters. But yeah, dude. I understand why you're excited that you have sand capabilities. Not just being able to have the capability to make a mold by yourself at all is huge, man. Yes. It's like, now I can do it. I can finally do it.
And I thought that I would be able to relax when I was making molds in my garage. And it's only been for like a couple of months that I've done it. I've had the capability, and I've only been to 2 iron pours where I've made molds in my garage. I thought it was going to be nice and relaxed, super fun. Like I'd take lots of footage of process. No, every single time it's been up until midnight, wake up at 5 a.m., flip the mold, like the same frantic dance that I would do at conferences.
Totally, man. Totally.
And so it's like, even though I have it at home, I haven't been able to break out of that cycle. And it's because of what you're talking about, in that we're out of school. We don't have the luxury to be able to, we don't have the luxury of being forced to concentrate on making molds and iron, paying somebody to force us to make your molds. Like, it's like when you can fit it in.
Yeah, man. Life is life, and there's a lot of it. So yeah, it's just because you don't have to go further physically to a studio that's on the other side of town. It doesn't mean it's easier. It doesn't mean it's less dirty. It doesn't mean it's less heavy. You know, it's still a lot of work. It's still timing.
Yeah. Totally. It's still like I get home from work and I'm like, I don't want to mix sand now.
I already took a shower, you know?
Yes, I was almost gonna say I already showered.
Yeah.
It doesn't get easier once you get out of school. And I feel like 50% of people listening know that, and 50% of people in school, that 50% of the people who are listening who are in like that are students are like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about it again.
Yep.
Like the good old days.
Yep. Yeah, dude. But that's iron, man. It's all hard.
Yeah.
But we love it. You know,
yeah.
There's so many reasons why we use iron and why we do these processes is because, we have to get past how difficult it is. We have to be okay with that to do it. Yeah, man. I mean, iron's just, it's beautiful and it's terrible and it's great, you know?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I guess there's a lot of materials that are like no other material ever, but there's something about iron just, I don't know, maybe this is like a little bit of an iron nerd sort of a thing, but just the color of cast iron like
Gorgeous.
is, and it's like you can't get it anywhere else. And the texture, the sand texture, like that's the thing. A lot of the times I use sand molds with a little bit rougher sand,
Uh-huh.
and I won't necessarily depending on what I'm making, I won't even do like the core wash because I want as much sandy texture,
Sure.
the sand, because when I'm at like a antique mall or something and I there's a cast iron object and the sand texture is just so enticing to me. Um,
Yeah.
but it's really funny how sometimes like I actually have something in my studio that I'm looking at right now that's cast iron, but then it was sprayed probably in China or something with a metallic silver, the like hammered texture spray paint that
Mhm.
you can get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like legitimately, or well, it's probably like more like sand texture than hammered texture, but it's like what you spray on something when you want it to look like it's metal, but it's not metal. When that is sprayed on cast iron, I just love it because the irony is so thick. Because
Yeah.
it's like it is cast iron, and then you sprayed it to try and make it look like cast iron. I don't know.
This like real and imitated kind of thing coming. That is funny.
The
That is
layers.
pretty funny, dude. Yeah, man.
I should make like a body of work that's cast iron and then I spray paint.
Spray painted iron.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
it. Do it. I love it. It's a little bit of a middle finger there. I like that. Yeah, but like to your point with the coloration, like I think there is no more beautiful like black than a iron that's been pulled out of a mold and like not hit with a grinder or cleaned up. It's
yes,
just that black or gray is such a like beautiful matte, but also a little sparkly. Like I just
yeah,
it's gorgeous. Like I hate when I need to clean up like flashing or something on a sculpture because
yeah,
it's gonna change the color and I can heat it up and I can get it close, but it's never back to that original just natural color that
yeah.
occurs.
It's
Love it.
like the virgin surface of
Yeah.
cast iron straight out of the mold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will tell you that when I do my sand molds, I factor in where the parting lines are going to be
Yeah.
with that same thing in mind, because I don't want to have a parting line like have flashing and have to clean up the flashing in a dumb spot. Like I will
Mm-hmm.
try and consider as much as I can, like, okay, this is going to be the parting line. I'm going to have to clean it up.
Yeah.
Like, unless I started making work where the flashing was part of it and I just
Mm-hmm.
left it. Because I know people do that very successfully. And it's something that I'm like, I should probably employ that because it, then you have no cleanup and you're like, no, it's how I meant it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also that grinded line,
Mm-hmm.
it's tough for me.
It
It's
is.
tough. And so I have to make it, this is intentionally where the parting line is, and then I'll grind it and usually then bring it up to like a pretty smooth, like with a palm sander,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's so intentional. But that might be the metalsmith in me.
Well, yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's all part of the puzzle too. Like, do I want this to not be visible? And how can I work that into my pattern? And
Mhm.
how can I work that parting line into it? Like, where are some undulations in
Yeah.
whatever I'm making to make it seamless, and that's part of the puzzle. I love that part of it. But then I mean, still, if you're not into that natural thing, the beauty of iron also is like if you want that shiny silver, you can get that. If you
Yeah.
want a bluish purple hue, you can heat treat it. If you
Yeah.
want a golden, like the coloration options are great. Really, truly, and you can do that with steel too. But there's just something different about iron to me personally, and maybe it's because we wouldn't be alive without iron.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because it's from space. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
because it's in the earth. Maybe it's because it's in our blood, but there's something about the fact that it's iron that is just almost spiritual to me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago, my mom had some health issues,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that happened was the iron in her blood dropped really, really low.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was one of those times that I was like, this thing that I love working with, that I'm surrounded by, that I'm probably eating when I'm grinding it.
Yep.
This it showed me how important it is to our bodies physically, and how
Yeah.
like we need it. We absolutely, and I, in a way, beyond the material, but beyond the things we make, there's something just natural and physical and life-giving about iron that will that is in nothing, no other material on earth, for me at least. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that connection can be made between our bodies and then this material, and then how we're choosing to manifest our artistic expression using it, and also against, like, I kind of feel um like against all odds, with the molding and the labor and the breaking of the iron, and then it still might not come out, or
Mhm.
like something might happen and the furnace wouldn't run, or like, there's against all odds. Then when you break open the mold and you see that it's come out perfectly,
Ugh.
it's like
Ugh.
it's just like everything. I mean, but then there are times where it's like, okay, there was some slag in that ladle, or maybe there was a short pour, or maybe
Sure,
there
sure.
was a air trap.
There's some pitting, whatever.
Yeah.
But then also that brings about the fact of, are you gonna give up because something went wrong, or are you gonna say, all right, how can I? This is what I have. How can I work with this? How can I
Mm-hmm.
make? Can I make this fit my intention, or am I now forcing it? Like, can I manipulate what I'm doing, or does this just need to be scrapped and
Mm-hmm.
redone?
Renounce it. Yeah.
Yeah. But when things don't turn out perfect, because there's way more opportunities for things to go wrong than there are for things to go right.
Yes.
When it kind of is one of those moments of art reflecting life. If
Mm-hmm.
something has gone wrong, how can I make it work? How can I benefit from this?
Yeah. I actually, that just triggered my memory. And I didn't forget this, but it triggered me to want to talk about. So you're familiar with the pieces that I do with the cubic zirconia stones, like the jewelry
Yeah.
industry stones, and I put them in the mold,
Mm-hmm.
and then like they're glued in the mold, and then I know, so I'm kind of just telling the
Sure. Yeah.
people who are listening, but they're in the pattern when I ram the mold, and then open the mold, take the pattern out, but I'll take fresh stones and glue them where the ram they were when they were rammed in the initial ramming of the mold, blah blah blah. And then the iron gets poured in, and the molten iron will capture the stones around the kind of widest parts, the girdle of the stone, and it'll stay in the casting. And that's something that I'm really excited about. But since I'm uh, working a full-time job and have a podcast and a YouTube channel, like I do it, it's been, this body of work has been spread over years, which is fine. But so at one of the pours at Fire in Memphis, and you and Jam were there for this, I cast these two kind of like ridiculously heavy art jewelry bracelets with the iron, with the cast in place stones in the iron. And I I was experimenting with the rate of failure. So like if I have 25 stones in one pattern, what is the rate that they're actually going to be captured by the metal? And it's a pretty high success rate. Like I'm pretty happy with like what I've been getting, but on that one, for the bracelets, one of the bracelets, one stone did not stay in. And it wasn't like it was in and it fell. I think that it just, I honestly don't know why that one didn't stay in. But when I finished the bracelets and I put them together, because they kind of like have a relationship with each other visually when they're being displayed. And then I was thinking about what I was going to title it. I titled the bracelets, quote, maybe it's a metaphor for life, unquote,
Mm.
because it was this like kind of not slap in the face because that's kind of dramatic, but it was just like the realization that I could do work as hard as I could. I could try and do everything right, get just the right amount of um the right amount of allowance so that the iron is going to capture the stones, but the stones are still visible. And then wait 24 or not 24 hours, but like wait until the next day to open the mold so that the stones don't shatter from the temperature shock. Like I can do everything within my power and still have a failure. And it's my choice as to what I call a failure and what I call a success. And so that was my art as a metaphor for life.
Totally.
Like
It's beautiful.
sometimes thanks. So sometimes not all the stones fit in. Or not sometimes not all the stones stay in.
There you go. Sometimes they don't. Yeah, man. And like I had I was one time casting it was a mold of my head, and it was supposed to be hollow, like a quarter-inch like shell of my head, and the core did not hold, so it ended up being a solid head, which iron's heavy and clunky, and it was going to originally be like 25 pounds, but with it being a solid head, it was like 65 pounds.
Wow.
So now I have this clunky head of mine to now work with, and just like what you were talking about, is that a failure, or is that, what does this now mean though? I have this thing that I didn't listen to people who were telling me what to do. I was being hard-headed, and now I have this actual physical thing that proves my hard-headedness, and
it's an
actual hard head. So in that way, it wasn't a failure. The sculpture kind of made itself in a way, and I was able to rework it into an idea that kind of resembles that. And yeah, man, it's one of my favorite things to show, so yeah, man, we screw up all the time, whatever. It's just, everybody's going to screw up all the time. How do you roll with it?
I mean, and sometimes the screw ups are the best things that can happen to you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see that in the moment.
Yeah. The old Bob Ross happy accidents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I mean, it's great. It's, we can apply that to life too. What have I screwed up on, and how can I make it work?
Yeah. And what have I learned, and how do I move forward? And a lot of times it's an important choice. And
yeah.
But that was one of the things that I didn't really like about casting when I first started iron casting, was how, I don't know if finicky is the wrong word, but I just remember thinking, well, this is kind of a crapshoot. Like, what if it doesn't come out? How can I plan this entire sculpture that, and this was in school. So it was, the professor wanted you to have a plan and sketches and a concept, and, or they would provide a concept, and you'd have to kind of fall within the guidelines of that. And I had a hard time because it was like, well, I could plan this whole sculpture, and what if the components don't cast, or don't cast well, or don't cast fully? It's a crapshoot. And I don't think that I had experienced any form of art making that was a factor. And so it was really kind of off-putting.
Yeah.
But then I learned, like, well, just cast a bunch of components. And then once you have the components, it's just like using a found material or a found object, or like as a jeweler, like using a stone or a cabochon or something. And then what do you do with it? But you have created the found object, or the element. You've created the element from scratch, and then it's in this beautiful material.
Sure. And then, like, would it be as exciting if we knew 100% it's going to turn out every time? Or, like, I think there's something that makes it a little more thrilling.
Ooh, I think you're right.
That, like, it's like, will it or won't it? Did I do everything right? Did I forget a step?
And then you'll be like, well,
the
vents. You'll be like, well, the vents popped. It filled. It's probably fine.
I think the pride of like a good successful cast is just that. It's like it could have gone wrong, you know? Like
Like
when
we
I
were talking about before, against all odds.
totally
And
like
then
yeah, like when I make a sculpture, I have my original idea. I have a fuzzy idea.
yeah.
And then the sculptures that when I finish them are just like my original idea are the ones that like I am really not drawn to. It's the ones
Mm.
that like evolve from that idea as I think and work on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there is that element of the possibility of change, the possibility of something happening that we don't intend, that makes it exciting and that gives us payoff in the end,
Yeah.
I think.
But also being open to that is a skill.
Yeah.
And some people have it and some people lean into it, but it was definitely something that I've seen people struggle with. And maybe I've struggled with it too.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point in like metalsmithing that usually if I draw something out, I won't draw out something that's too difficult for my skill set just
Mm.
because I've been conditioned to know what my limitations are and what the limitations of my studio is. But in iron casting, if I have a pattern, I don't necessarily think while I'm making the pattern, like, oh man, how many parts is this pattern going to be? How
Mm.
am I going to create the parting line? Where the parting line is where I want it to be, like how
Yeah.
and like in a 10-hour window of a sand mold
Yeah.
at a conference,
Yeah.
like
And
sometimes you have like a day to
yeah.
make just everything. Yeah.
Totally, man. And there's like this element of control that we need to be okay with releasing.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to teach, and like I always knew when students, when there was an aspect of a sculpture that was not working or that should be considered, and it would be pointed out by a student or myself or whoever, and they say, well, I wanted it that way, I wanted it to be that way, and it's like, I know you didn't, and that's fine, that's okay, like but it's hard to relinquish that control,
Yes.
you know, that I know what I'm doing. Control is hard to, you know, hard to not uh live with, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think that there's so many different skills that iron casting, I mean, casting, mold making in general, but also there's something about the like iron. And I think I've talked about it with somebody else too, just briefly, but iron has this weird exclusiveness, not necessarily in the community, not like this is the VIP iron casting over here. Like we're all welcoming, but the material of iron casting, because it involves such interesting accoutrement of like the furnace and a blower and the know-how and the
Mhm.
people and scrap metal, like like all of that stuff. And then when you have a result and you're like, yes, I cast this in iron, uh, you know, not everybody believes me, or like not everybody can understand, oh no, it's iron. I Does that make sense? Like there
Yeah.
is, the material has a certain exclusivity that if you are not seeking out iron pours and iron conferences, like, I want to be a little bit of a jerk for right now and just say on the record, like bronze and aluminum is kind of like a dime a dozen. Just gonna say it.
Woo! Girl, look at you wrinkling feathers. I
I
love
know,
it. I
I
love
know,
it.
I know. But it's it and there's plenty of people that love casting aluminum and bronze, and I'm not really poo-pooing them, but
Yeah.
that I think is why I'm more interested in iron, is because I like how, like, I really have to work to get to those pores. I can't just, go to the local college. And I mean, some people can because they're lucky enough to be close to an iron school or something, but
Sure. And you need people to do it with you, and
yes.
all of these people have that experience too, of like, you know, what how am I going to do this? And
Yeah.
needing other people to do it as well. Yeah, man, there's something very different. To your point, bronze and aluminum are great, and they have their reasons for, existing, and sculptures being made out of them. And but yeah, there's something about that cheap ass iron
Yeah.
and that's the other thing too. It's like it's the most inexpensive, so it can, I guess, in that sense, it can be seen as like the least precious.
Yeah. It's like lowbrow
But I love it.
exclusivity.
I love it. That's what
I
I
know.
love, man. I'd rather go into this dingy, grungy basement to go see a band play
Yeah.
than some beautiful concert. Like there's something about the overlooked that
Yeah.
is beautiful to me. Yeah,
The
totally.
grittiness and the rawness and like like all of what it entails.
Mhm.
And then there'll be like somebody like, so I was in Memphis at the fire conference in this past May, and like David Lobdell was there, and like
Mhm.
he drove from Las Vegas, Nevada. Or wait, no, not like, it's Las Vegas, New Mexico. He drove from Las Vegas, New Mexico. I don't know how long that is of a drive,
It's a
but it's
trip.
a long ass drive.
It's a trip. Yeah, especially
And
with gas prices what they are. Yeah,
I
dude.
know. I
It's
don't even want to.
I'm not getting into it.
I know, I know,
No,
I
it's
know.
it's
But it's
long and
true.
it's expensive. Yeah, dude. It's a commitment.
Yeah. And could he have poured closer to home or poured himself with a bunch of people? Absolutely. Like probably. I mean, I didn't talk to him about it, but it's like he came for the love of the game.
Yeah,
And
yeah, if he poured closer to home, the other thing is like probably wouldn't have seen you. He wouldn't have seen James Vanderpool. He wouldn't have seen
yes.
Kevin Vanek,
Yeah.
Jerry Massey, who, the regulars to those things. I really wanted to go this year, but we couldn't swing it. Yeah,
It'll
man.
happen. It'll happen. Things will
Yeah.
calm down, and
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
yeah.
More pours will be had.
Yes. And I think that we're all ready now that the pandemic seems to be, loosening, and,
That was the other cool thing about the female pour too. That was November of 2019, like November 1st,
yes.
something. So that was like
Yes.
a lot of people's last pour before like we couldn't get together anymore.
Absolutely.
So it was also like, we got the last one in, man.
Yeah. And we didn't even know. Like we didn't even.
Yeah.
Such a wild thing. And it's like, so when Kelly Ludeking was on his episode, he mentioned 9/11,
mm-hmm.
like messed his whole world up. Mm-hmm. And this is, our I mean, we were alive. You and I were alive for 9/11,
yeah.
But I was like in high school.
Yeah, I was in 8th grade.
It was scary. It was traumatizing, but like, yeah, we had to start taking our shoes off at the airport. But like in high school, the day to day, like we didn't all of a sudden get metal detectors in high school. You know what I mean? It's like 9/11 affected us, affected my parents, but they were kind of like later in their careers and like working in a hospital and a factory. So like they didn't lose their jobs because of 9/11. And so, but the pandemic is like our generation's, oh my gosh, like, I mean, a lot of what generation hasn't been affected by the pandemic?
Right. Like our parents had like Kennedy, and then there was 9/11.
Oh yeah.
And now the pandemic. Yeah. There's always that generational thing.
Upset. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That changes courses of lives, it's just so wild.
Which it's like Sloss last year because of that had to be totally virtual. And how do you have an iron conference virtual? I mean, we figured it out, and it went over great. But yeah, Jam and I were on the steering committee for the student competition for that. Yeah, man, it's just gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah.
But I think that something like a little silver lining, but something that's good that came out of that is now probably moving forward, conferences, maybe SLOS, National Conference on Contemporary Cast Iron Art and Practices, which is the conference at SLOS. I just had to get that in there. Maybe it'll be offered in the future as like a hybrid option for people, maybe people overseas or something, for a different price rate, would be able to at least tune in to a keynote speaker or have somebody with a live cam live feed kind of go around the exhibitions, or, it's like it might actually end up being more accessible to people that can't make the actual event for whatever reason. Moving forward, like there's things that are set up because of the necessities of the pandemic that might actually end up lending lending a positive aspect to accessibility.
Accessibility, that's the great word for it. It just, we never know what is going to happen that steers us in what direction. Man, so I mean, humans will figure out how to do what we want to do safely, no matter what. And I want to do iron. So we're going to figure out how to do it no matter what happens.
Perseverance.
Yeah, totally.
Well, let's talk about something you have hot on the horizon. Anything?
So we are going to be planning a pour. So we just got a new studio in Peoria, and it's so cool. It's perfect. We are at a new studio, and it's a location where we can have a pour at, like, right outside of the studio.
That's awesome.
So
can I just throw in a little, this is like probably going to be annoying to some people, but so for the first pour that you had in Peoria at the Big Picture Peoria, there was like one big ass mold, and you were working on the furnace, and Jam and I went back to the studio to load up all the molds because your studio was like further away from the pour site. And there was one mold that the two of us, and we're strong, we could not get it up the stairs. And there was this like random guy. It was like maybe like one of the sketchier things that I do, because Jam and I were trying to get it up the stairs from the old studio, and we had everything else loaded up, but we just like couldn't. And I was like, well, let's just ask that guy that's like hanging out outside the building.
Hey, man.
And he helped us.
Yeah, totally.
Because at first we were like, hey, like, are you available for a second? Because she had recognized him from like being a friend of one of the other people in the build. So it wasn't like a complete stranger, I think.
Yeah.
But I was like, let's just see if he'll give us a hand. And I think he was like, oh, there's like, yeah, what do you need help lifting? And then we bring him over to the mold, which was like halfway down the hallway towards the stairs. And he was like, like immediately disappointed.
Yeah.
But God bless him, whoever he was, he helped us and we got it into the trailer.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, we're having this iron pour if you want to come and check it out. And he was like, yeah. But his tone was like, no, I'm done with the both of you.
My lower back is finished already. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my memories of your old studio. But the new studio, you'll be able to roll right out.
Yeah.
The molds right out.
That was the problem with the old studio. It was great. It was a great studio. And it's owned by Art Inc. is the organization in Peoria. Jonathan and Nikki Romaine, plug them. They're great people. And they let us work in their basement, it was great. You know, it was everything we needed to get going, but
it was a nice space, big.
You had to go down a flight of stairs is the problem. And we have, 500-pound furnaces, and it's just, that was the issue. So like when we had to move our furnaces out, like there was one, we had to tie a strap around a furnace that was on wheels, and I built this ramp to pull it up this 45-degree angle stair, like with our truck. Like it was a mess. Anyway. So we got a new studio on the first floor with a big old garage door, and it's wonderful.
Yes.
So we are the pour that we had with Streeter High School recently really like wet our whistles to get another pour going soon. So we're starting to plan another one in Peoria here. So get your molds ready.
I'm there.
Heck yeah, man. We're just a few hours north of you.
I know.
So are you still St. Louis area?
I'm in Edwardsville, Illinois.
Well,
actually, I shouldn't say where I actually am, but I work at SIUE. And
yeah.
But totally. That was new since the pandemic too.
Cool. Yeah.
Is this job at SIUE?
Yeah.
So, but I'm in Illinois. but in
Yeah,
the St. Louis area. So yeah, so I'm like probably 15 minutes closer.
that's fine. That's fine.
Every little bit counts.
Yeah. So we need to hash. I mean, it's very early in the planning. We need to hash out details and everything.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get the word out about it. So bring your molds, bring your happiness, and that's the biggest thing that's exciting me right now. Yeah.
So no dates yet.
No dates yet.
Okay, but we'll keep them posted.
Yeah, I think we want to shoot for. I mean, now that we have a furnace that's easy to put together, we can do everything way more quickly. So end of the summer, early fall, something like that. Yeah.
All right. I'll keep my weather eye on the horizon for
Do
news
it.
about that. And
Do
then
it.
when it's scheduled, then we'll like blast it on the podcast iron Instagram and stuff. So
That'd be
people will
great.
know about it. Yeah. And I mean, you guys will too on your social media, but
Much appreciated. And if you're listening to this and you don't know anything about pouring iron and you want to come even just see how it works coming out, we have all the safety. We have way extra safety gear. We have all the tools. You don't need to bring anything but yourself and a willingness to be stoked. And we'll set you up and help you learn to pour iron.
Fantastic. I'm excited. I've been waiting for you guys to have another one. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really good to catch up with you in person.
Yeah.
So in closing, do you have any advice? Any advice for future casters, current casters, people looking into into iron casting? Fellow casters.
I got some nuggets of wisdom, I think.
Yeah.
So one big thing that I have learned over the years is that when it comes to any foundry work, like mold making, pouring metal, whatever, there's a million ways to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is going to give you unsolicited advice. Oh, what are you doing it like that for? I want to do it like that. I want you to do it like this. You know what you should do? Listen to everybody, but filter it all out afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Hear what everybody's opinion, and then decide what to not use.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll probably learn something here and there. So that's one thing. And then the biggest bit of advice I can ever give, no matter what it is be a pleasure to work with. Be a pleasure to work with and care about your fellow artists.
That's a good one.
Yeah, totally.
And it's not always easy.
Nobody likes working with an ass.
No.
Everybody likes working with people that make them feel heard and appreciated and want you to come back next time. So,
amen.
Yeah.
To that. All right. So everybody that's listening, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast Iron with Danny Rohr. And Danny and I are going to go on over to the after show. Woo! And we're going to talk about our super secret segment, which is just going to be 15 to 20 more minutes of, we're going to pick right now. Let's see. So I'm going to just list off some kind of questions. And a lot of these we've already covered though, too.
Oh, shoot.
So there's like, what are your favorite type of molds to make besides a furnace? What other tools have you made for iron casting? Tell me a funny story that's related to iron casting, a funny story about an iron pour experience, which are always my favorite. What is the most scared you've ever been at an iron pour? What's the worst thing that's ever happened? Your favorite place to pour iron? So don't tell me now, but just tell me if you have any ideas, or we could always figure it out in the after show too. It doesn't.
Do you want me to give like a teaser?
Yes. That's what they're here for. They're on the edge of their seats right now.
I'll give you a pants falling down.
What?
Pants falling down. That's all you get.
That's all you get? Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm going over to the after show.
Pay that money to that Patreon and hear about some pants falling down. Looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. Yeah.
At an iron pour. Just.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Obviously. Okay. Sorry. I get so excited at these stories, these specific stories. So yes, everybody that's listening or watching, thanks so much for tuning in. And Danny, thanks for being on the podcast.
I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
I love you too. Thanks. All right, guys. See you later. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in. Another great one in the books today. I really loved how Danny was able to seamlessly weave in and around his iron origin story and sprinkle in a little iron art theory here and a little technical talk there. The steps that he and Jam are making with Black Dog Metal Arts to create accessibility for art making in their region is really admirable work. And I'm so happy that he was able to share his story with us today. Danny, thanks for this great conversation. I immensely enjoyed talking iron with you, and I feel unbelievably fortunate that you and Jam live so close by because I just can't wait to visit and pour in Peoria once again. And I have to say, I am so very inspired to hear about all the work that you're doing with Black Dog Metal Arts, but also playing your part for Radish Kitchen, as well as still holding onto the thread of your studio practice. And man, you're staying alive and you're making it count. Brother, keep on fighting the good fight. If you want to follow Danny on Instagram, his handle is Mr. Danny Rohr, but also follow Black Dog Metal Arts and visit their website, www.blackdogmetalarts.com. Through those portals, you'll be able to learn more information about what Danny and his wife Jam are doing on that front. And heck, Danny is really involved in Radish Kitchen. So if you're in the central Illinois area or happen to find yourself in that region, check them out. The website is radishkitchen.org, and on Instagram, it's Radish Kitchen Peoria. And now it's my shameless plug time. If you like what I'm doing and you're interested in supporting the podcast, go over to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/podcastiron. There you can choose a contribution level that fits within your budget. And Patreon supporters at any level get access to the after show from each episode. And this is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes with the show's guest, where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story. In this episode's after show, Danny spills the deets on an iron pour pants drop, among other things. So for as little as $1 a month, you can show your support to the show and get this extra content. Please believe me when I say that even $1 makes a difference. And thank you so much to those of you who have already gone over to Patreon to sign up to support the show financially. It's really helping to keep me going. If you don't have it in the budget to support the podcast on Patreon, I totally understand. But instead, if you could share the podcast with somebody you think would be interested in listening or watching, I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and for that I say thank you so much. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.